The coffee hit her chest before she even heard the cup shatter. It was scalding, soaking through the thin fabric of her uniform, burning her skin as gasps rippled across the cafe. She froze for half a second, long enough to feel the sting, long enough to feel the humiliation crawl up her neck before she bowed her head and whispered an apology she didn't owe anyone. "I said oat milk," the young man snapped, his voice sharp with entitlement. "Do you know how expensive my time is?" He was handsome in the careless way money allows. Tailored coat, watch worth more than the cafe's monthly rent. The billionaire's son. Everyone knew him. No one ever challenged him, except someone had just stopped chewing. At the corner table, half hidden behind a newspaper he hadn't turned, in 5 minutes, sat a man whose presence bent rooms without effort. Dark suit, still posture, eyes that missed nothing. The waitress didn't see him. She was too busy biting back tears, too busy kneeling to clean the mess while her hands trembled. She didn't see the way the man at the corner table slowly folded his paper, or the way his jaw tightened, just slightly. And she certainly didn't know that the most dangerous man in the city had just watched everything. She locked herself in the staff bathroom and pressed a wad of paper towels to her chest, breathing through the burn. Pain she could handle, shame was harder. She stared at her reflection, 28, tired eyes, hair pulled back too tight, and reminded herself why she was here, why she swallowed things like this. Because rent was due. Because daycare was expensive. Because her son needed new shoes. When she came back out, the billionaire's son was gone. No apology. No consequences. The manager wouldn't meet her eyes, but the man from the corner table was still there. He stood as she passed, just long enough for her to feel his gaze like a weight. Not leering, not pitying, something else, something sharp and quiet. "Are you hurt?" he asked. She hesitated. "I'm fine." It was a lie. He knew it. They both did. He nodded once, like he respected the lie, then reached into his jacket and placed a stack of bills on the table. Far too much for a coffee. Then he left without another word. She didn't know his name, only that her hands stopped shaking after he walked out. 3 weeks later, she noticed the black car parked across from her apartment for the 3rd time. She told herself it was nothing. Her neighborhood was rough. Cars lingered. Men watched. Life went on. But when she walked her son to school the next morning, the same car rolled slowly behind them. Her grip tightened on her child's small hand. "Mama?" he asked, looking up. "Why are you squeezing?" She forced a smile. "Sorry, baby." That night, a knock came at her door. 2 men stood in the hallway. Polite, well-dressed, dangerous in a way she felt in her bones. "Miss Alvarez," one said. "Our boss would like to speak with you." Her heart dropped into her stomach. About what? About the cafe. She almost laughed, almost cried. She looked back at her son, asleep on the couch, his chest rising and falling softly. "I'm not leaving him." "You won't," the man said. "He asked us to make that clear." The office overlooked the river, floor-to-ceiling glass, quiet, controlled. The kind of place where decisions were made that never reached the news. The man stood with his back to her when she entered. "Sit," he said. She did, her hands folded in her lap, spine straight. She refused to look small. "I'm sorry about what happened," he said, turning at last. "That shouldn't have happened to you." She swallowed. "If you're here to scare me into silence, I'm here because I failed to intervene," he cut in. "And because the man who did that to you is about to learn what accountability feels like." Her eyes widened. "I don't want trouble." He studied her for a long moment. "You already live with it." Silence stretched between them, thick, loaded. Then his gaze shifted to the photo she carried out by mistake, slipping halfway from her bag. A little boy with dark eyes and a crooked smile. His breath caught. "How old is he?" he asked quietly. She followed his gaze. "Too late." "4," she said. "Why?" He didn't answer. He couldn't. Because the room suddenly felt like it was tilting. Because 4 years ago, he'd walked away from a woman he loved, convinced distance was protection. And because that child had his eyes. He didn't confront her. Not then. He let her leave with promises of protection, compensation, justice handled quietly. But that night, he sat alone in his office, long after the city went dark, staring at nothing. He remembered a younger version of her. Laughing, angry, telling him she wouldn't wait forever. He remembered choosing power over love, control over vulnerability. And now, fate had placed her back in front of him, burned and humiliated by another man's arrogance. His jaw tightened. He would fix this, all of it, even if it cost him everything. The billionaire's son issued a public apology 2 days later. Donations. A settlement. His reputation bruised but intact. She didn't feel better. What she felt was watched. Protected. Yes, but also pulled into a world she'd fought hard to escape. When the man asked to see her again, she almost said no. Almost. They met in a quiet park this time. Neutral ground. Her son played nearby, unaware. "You didn't tell me," he said. "You didn't ask," she replied. "I should have stayed." "Yes," she said simply. He flinched. They stood there, years of regret pressing between them, while their son laughed on the swings. "I don't want his life," she said. "Not the danger. Not the shadows." "I don't want him in the shadows either," he said. "I want him safe." She looked at him then. Really looked. The power. The loneliness. The man who had loved her badly and lost her. "Safety isn't control," she said. He nodded. "Then teach me." Time moved differently after that. He learned to show up quietly, to sit on the floor, to listen, to wait. Her son warmed to him slowly, instinctively cautious, then curious, then open, and she watched it all with a heart split between fear and hope. The past didn't vanish, the danger didn't disappear, but the man changed, piece by piece. Until one night, standing in her kitchen, he said, "I won't ask you to forgive me." She met his gaze. "Good. I'll earn it." The billionaire's son left the country. The cafe closed. Life shifted. They didn't rush love. They rebuilt it, brick by brick, honest and fragile. And when she finally let him kiss her again, it wasn't fireworks. It was relief. Years later, as they stood watching their son run toward the river, she thought back to the burn of hot coffee and the man who saw everything, not just the cruelty, but her strength. If this story moved you, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps these stories find the people who need them. The coffee hit her before she could step back. It slammed against her chest in a burst of heat and liquid pain, soaking through the thin white fabric of her uniform, searing her skin. The cup shattered on the floor a heartbeat later, ceramic exploding outward. The sound sharp enough to slice through the low hum of the cafe. Conversation stopped. Chair scraped. Someone gasped. She didn't scream. She froze. For half a second, her body forgot how to react, caught between shock and instinct. Then the pain rushed in, blooming hot and vicious, and she bowed her head, breath hitching, hands trembling at her sides. "I'm so sorry," she said automatically, the words falling out before she could stop them. The man standing in front of her scoffed. "Are you serious?" he snapped. "I said oat milk. How hard is that to understand?" His voice was loud, confident, sharpened by the certainty that nothing would happen to him. He was tall, well-groomed, wearing a tailored coat that probably cost more than her monthly rent. A gold watch glinted on his wrist as he lifted his hand, pointing at the spreading stain on her uniform like it offended him personally. "You just ruined my morning," he went on. "Do you know who I am?" She nodded, still staring at the floor. Everyone knew. The billionaire's son. A regular. Untouchable. "I'll get you another one right away," she whispered. "On the house." He laughed, short and cruel. "You think that fixes it?" Her cheeks burned almost as much as her skin. She dropped to her knees to clean the mess, fingers shaking as she reached for paper towels, careful not to cut herself on the shards. Around her, people stared and then quickly looked away, pretending to check their phones, their cups, anything but her. No one said a word. No one except the man in the corner. He hadn't moved since it happened. He sat alone at a small round table, a folded newspaper resting beside his untouched espresso. He didn't raise his voice. "He didn't need to. That's enough," he said. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. but it landed. The billionaire's son turned, irritation flashing across his face. "Excuse me." The man rose slowly to his feet. He was older, maybe early 40s, dressed in a dark suit that didn't beg for attention yet somehow commanded it. His posture was relaxed, but his eyes cold, steady, locked onto the younger man like a warning. "She's apologized," he continued. "You embarrassed her. You're done." A hush settled over the cafe, heavy and expectant. The billionaire's son scoffed again, but there was a flicker of uncertainty now. "Mind your business." The man stepped closer, not threatening, not aggressive, just close enough to make space feel scarce. "I am." Something shifted. The billionaire's son hesitated, jaw tightening, pride warring with instinct. Then he scoffed one last time, muttered something under his breath, and turned away, grabbing his coat. "This place is a joke," he said loudly, storming out. The door slammed. Only then did the waitress realize she was holding her breath. She stayed on the floor for a moment longer, heart pounding, pain radiating through her chest in sharp waves. She focused on breathing, on not crying, on keeping herself together in front of strangers who would forget this by lunchtime. When she finally stood, the man was still there. Their eyes met. Up close, she noticed the faint lines at the corners of his eyes, the stillness in him, like a storm held tightly in check. His gaze dropped briefly to the reddening fabric of her uniform, then back to her face. "You should put cold water on that," he said quietly. "It'll blister." "I'm fine," she replied, reflexive. He studied her for a second longer, as if weighing something. Then he reached into his jacket, pulled out a thick stack of bills, and placed it gently on the table beside her. "For the trouble," he said. Her eyes widened. "Sir, I can't." "Please," he interrupted, already stepping back. "Take it." Before she could argue, he turned and walked out, the bell above the door chiming softly behind him. She stood there, stunned, the cafe slowly returning to life around her. In the staff bathroom a few minutes later, she locked the door and finally let herself shake. She pressed cool water against her skin, biting her lip to keep quiet. The burn throbbed, but it wasn't the pain that made her chest feel tight. It was the familiar weight of humiliation, of swallowing things because she had no choice. She stared at her reflection, dark hair pulled back too tight, tired eyes, a woman who couldn't afford to make scenes. Just get through the shift, she whispered to herself. When she clocked out that evening, the sun was already low. She wrapped her coat tightly around her and hurried down the street, mind already on the next part of her day. Pick up Mateo, make dinner, help with homework, pretend everything was normal. She didn't notice the black car parked across the street, and she had no idea that the man who had defended her was sitting inside it, watching her walk away, his jaw clenched, his thoughts darker than the coming night, because he hadn't just seen a waitress humiliated. He had seen a past he thought he'd buried, and a future he never expected to find again. She woke before the alarm, the ache in her chest pulling her out of sleep like a dull hook. For a moment she didn't remember why it hurt. Then she shifted, the fabric of her t-shirt brushing against tender skin. The memory rushed back, heat, humiliation, the sound of the cup shattering. She sat up slowly and went to the bathroom, lifting her shirt to examine the damage. Angry red patches bloomed across her skin, already darkening at the edges. It would bruise. It would hurt for days. She exhaled through her nose. Pain was manageable. Rent was not. From the bedroom, a small voice called, "Mama." "I'm here," she answered immediately, pulling the shirt back down and forcing energy into her step. Mateo sat up in bed, hair sticking up in soft curls, eyes still heavy with sleep. 4 years old and already observant in ways that scared her sometimes, he watched her face as she crossed the room. "Did you work late again?" he asked. She smiled and brushed his hair back. "A little." "Did someone make you sad?" The question landed harder than the coffee had. She shook her head gently. "No, baby, just tired." He studied her for another second, unconvinced, then nodded and held his arms up to be lifted. She carried him to the kitchen, the familiar weight of him against her hip grounding her. This was why she endured. This was why she stayed quiet and bowed her head and cleaned up other people's messes. While Mateo ate his cereal, she packed his backpack and checked her phone. No new messages, No missed calls. Life apparently went on. By the time she dropped him at daycare and headed toward the bus stop, the city had fully woken. Horns blared. Vendors shouted. People rushed past her like she was invisible. That's when she noticed the car. Black, sleek, parked across the street, engine running. The windows were tinted too dark to see inside. She slowed, her pulse quickening for reasons she couldn't explain. The car didn't move, didn't follow, it just waited. She told herself she was imagining things. That last night had shaken her more than she realized. She boarded the bus without looking back. Still, the unease stayed with her all day. At the cafe, the manager avoided her eyes, even more than usual. No one mentioned the incident, but she caught whispers, glances, pity, curiosity, relief that it hadn't been them. Mid-afternoon, a woman in an expensive coat came in, ordered a tea, and sat by the window. She watched her the entire time, eyes sharp and assessing. When she left, she slipped a business card onto the counter. No logo, just a name and a number. Her stomach twisted. She didn't call. That night, as she and Mateo sat on the couch watching cartoons, headlights washed briefly across the living room wall. She stood and peered through the blinds. The black car sat across the street. Her throat went dry. She locked the door, checked the windows, sat back down, pulling Mateo closer than necessary. He didn't protest. He leaned into her, warm and trusting, his small fingers curling into her sleeve. "Mama," he murmured, already half asleep. "You're shaking." She pressed a kiss to his hair. Just cold. But she wasn't cold. Across the street, the man sat in silence, hands resting on his thighs, eyes fixed on the dim apartment window. He hadn't planned this. Watching her like this felt wrong, invasive, but he couldn't stop himself. Not after the cafe, not after the way her face had looked when she thought no one was really seeing her, and not after the photo he couldn't get out of his mind. Earlier that day, he'd pulled her name from memory like a wound reopening. Sofia Alvarez. He hadn't said it out loud in 4 years. Hadn't let himself think it. He'd told himself she'd moved on, that she'd found someone safer, better. But the child, the timing, the eyes. He closed his own eyes briefly, jaw tightening. Regret was a useless emotion in his world, but tonight it wrapped around his ribs and squeezed until breathing felt like work. He nodded once to the driver. Tomorrow. The knock came just after dinner the following evening. Sofia froze mid-step, a plate still in her hand. Mateo looked up from his coloring book. "Someone's at the door," he said helpfully. "I know," she whispered. Her heart pounded as she set the plate down and walked toward the door, every instinct screaming at her not to open it. She glanced through the peephole. 2 men stood in the hallway, well-dressed, calm, not trying to hide anything. She opened the door a crack. "Yes?" "Miss Alvarez," one of them said politely. "Our employer would like to speak with you." Her breath caught. "About what?" "About what happened to you." Her fingers tightened on the door. "I don't want trouble." "You won't get any," the man replied. "And you won't be alone." She swallowed. "I have a child." "We know," he said gently. "He'll be safe." That word safe echoed through her chest, heavy with promises no one ever kept. She looked back at Mateo, who was watching her with wide eyes now. "I need a minute," she said. She closed the door, leaned her forehead against it, and breathed. 4 years ago, she'd walked away from danger. Tonight, it had come knocking, and somewhere deep inside, she knew there was no pretending this was coincidence anymore. She didn't sleep that night. She lay on her back, staring at the cracked ceiling, counting Mateo's breaths from the other side of the room. Every sound in the hallway made her muscles tense. A door opening, footsteps, the elevator groaning. Her mind kept circling the same questions with nowhere to land. Who was he really? And why now? By morning, exhaustion settled into her bones like damp cold. She moved through the routine on autopilot, packing Mateo's lunch, tying his shoes, kissing his forehead longer than usual. When she dropped him off, she crouched to his level. "If anyone asks you to come with them," she said carefully, "you say no. You wait for Mama." He frowned. Like strangers? Yes, like strangers. He nodded solemnly, as if committing it to memory. The black car was waiting when she stepped back onto the sidewalk. This time it pulled up beside her. The window slid down smoothly, revealing the same man she hadn't stopped thinking about since the cafe. In daylight, he looked different. More real. Less like a shadow. Sofia, he said. Just her name. Soft, certain. She stopped walking. How do you know where I live? I didn't want to scare you, he replied. But I needed to see you. Her laugh came out brittle. You sent men to my door. I sent protection, he corrected. There's a difference. She folded her arms, suddenly aware of how small the street felt. You don't get to decide that for me. His gaze sharpened, not angry, but focused. You're right. The admission threw her off balance. Get in, he said. We'll talk somewhere public. Somewhere you choose. She hesitated, then named a park 2 blocks away. He nodded. I'll follow. She walked, every step heavy with memory. The park was quiet at this hour, benches still damp with dew. She sat at the far end, keeping distance between them when he joined her. Neither spoke at first. You shouldn't have come back, she said finally. I never left, he replied. I just stayed far enough away to lie to myself. She turned to him then, anger flashing hot and sudden. You vanished. You didn't call. You didn't ask. I thought leaving was protecting you. And I thought loving you meant trusting you, she shot back. Silence stretched between them, thick with years unsaid. He exhaled slowly. I saw your son. Her heart slammed against her ribs. You don't get to talk about him. I get to be honest, he said quietly. He looks like me. The words hit like a physical blow. She stood, abruptly, shaking. No. You don't get to rewrite the past. I'm not, he said, standing as well, keeping his distance. I'm trying to understand the present. You don't need to understand anything, she snapped. We're fine. He studied her, really studied her, the worn shoes, the tension she carried in her shoulder, the way her hand hovered unconsciously near her pocket where her phone was. You're surviving, he said. That's not the same. She hated that he was right. I didn't tell you because I didn't want this, she said, voice cracking. Your world. Your danger. And yet it found you anyway, he replied. Through my mistake. She closed her eyes. Images flashed: hot coffee, shattered ceramic, Mateo's small fingers gripping hers. I can't do this, she whispered. He nodded once. Then let me do something. She opened her eyes. Like what? Let me make sure no one ever treats you like that again, he said. Let me take responsibility. For what? She asked bitterly. For a cup of coffee. For walking away, he said. For not knowing my son. Her breath caught despite herself. I'm not asking to take him, he added quickly. I'm asking for time. To earn the right to be here. She looked away, blinking hard. I don't trust you, she said. I don't expect you to, he replied. I just need you not to shut the door. She turned back to him, eyes searching his face for lies. She found none, only regret, and something else, fear. I will not let you hurt him, she said. Not by leaving again. Not by pulling him into your life and disappearing. I won't disappear, he said simply. Promises were easy, she knew that. But so was refusal, and somehow that felt impossible too. I'll think about it, she said. It wasn't yes, but it wasn't no. As she walked away, she didn't look back. She didn't need to. She could feel him watching, the weight of unfinished things pressing between them. And for the first time since the cafe, she wondered if fate wasn't finished with her. Yet, Sofia spent the next week, pretending nothing had changed, which took more effort than she expected. She went to work, smiled at customers, kept her voice steady. She picked Mateo up on time, cooked dinner, read him stories. From the outside, her life looked the same, but underneath, every moment felt like it was being lived with one ear turned toward danger. The black car never parked directly outside again. Instead, it appeared down the block, or across the street, or not at all present, without being obvious. She hated that part of her felt safer because of it. Mateo noticed anyway. Why are there always the same cars near our house? He asked one evening as they brushed their teeth. She froze for half a second, toothbrush midair. What do you mean? He shrugged. They don't look like neighbors' cars. Kids saw everything. They just didn't always understand it. They're just passing through, she said, hoping the lie sounded light. He studied her reflection in the mirror, then nodded, accepting it for now. 2 days later, the cafe manager called her into the back office. "We're letting you go," he said, not meeting her eyes. Her chest tightened. Why? He shifted in his chair. "Things have been complicated since the incident. Some people don't want trouble, so I'm trouble," she said flatly. He sighed. "I'm sorry, Sofia." She walked out with her last paycheck folded tightly in her hand, anger and fear colliding in her stomach. She didn't cry, not yet. Crying was for later, when Mateo couldn't see. That night, she sat at the small kitchen table long after Mateo fell asleep. Bills spread out in front of her like an accusation. The numbers didn't work. No matter how she rearranged them, they didn't work. Her phone buzzed. A message. No name. Just a number. "I heard about the cafe. May I come by?" Her fingers hovered over the screen. Pride screamed at her to say no. Exhaustion whispered that she didn't have the luxury. 10 minutes, she typed back. He arrived in 8. This time, she let him inside. The apartment felt even smaller with him in it, his presence filling the narrow space. He took off his coat, glanced around, without judgment, the worn couch, the chipped table, the drawings taped to the fridge. "This is his?" he asked softly, gesturing to a crayon picture of 3 stick figures holding hands. She nodded. "He likes drawing families." Something unreadable crossed his face. "I didn't come to take over," he said quickly, sensing her tension. "I came because you lost your job." She crossed her arms. "I don't want your money, I know," he said. "That's why I'm not offering charity." She raised an eyebrow. "Then what are you offering?" "A job," he replied. "Not for me. For one of my legitimate businesses. Office work. Flexible hours. Good pay." She stared at him. "You planned this." "I prepared for the possibility," he corrected, "because I know how the world treats women like you." Her jaw tightened. "You don't get to categorize me." "You're right," he said immediately. "I'm sorry." The apology landed differently than she expected. No defense, no excuses. She exhaled slowly. "If I accept, there are rules. Name them." "You don't show up unannounced. You don't talk to Mateo unless I say so. You don't make promises you can't keep." He nodded without hesitation. "Agreed." "And if I say stop," she added, meeting his eyes, "you stop." His voice was low, steady. "I will." She studied him for a long moment, weighing fear against reality. Mateo stirred in his sleep down the hall, murmuring something she couldn't make out. "I'll think about it," she said again, the phrase becoming familiar. He smiled faintly. "That's all I ask." As he reached the door, he paused. "For what it's worth, I'm glad you didn't disappear." Her throat tightened. "I didn't have that option." He looked back at her, something like pain flickering in his eyes. "Neither did I. I just pretended I did." After he left, she locked the door and leaned against it, heart pounding. She slid down until she was sitting on the floor, arms wrapped around herself. She hadn't invited danger in. She'd invited possibility, and that terrified her more. The first day at the new job felt surreal. The office was clean, quiet, professional. No shouting customers. No hot coffee sloshing dangerously close to skin. Her supervisor was kind, efficient, didn't ask intrusive questions. At lunch, Sofia sat by the window and let herself breathe for the first time in weeks. But peace never lasted long. That afternoon, as she packed up to leave, she saw him through the glass walls, standing in the hallway, speaking to someone in a low voice. He didn't come in, didn't interrupt. He simply looked up, caught her eye, and inclined his head slightly, respecting the boundary. Her chest tightened unexpectedly. That evening, Mateo asked, "Mama, did you have a good day?" She smiled, genuine this time. "I did." "Good," he said seriously. "You smile more when you're happy." She kissed his forehead, heart aching. Later, as she tucked him in, he asked sleepily, "Is my dad nice?" The question hit her like a punch. She swallowed. "Why do you ask?" He shrugged. "Some kids have mean dads. Some have nice ones." She brushed his hair back gently. "If you ever meet him," she said carefully, I think he'd try very hard to be nice. Mateo nodded, already drifting off. Sofia sat there long after he slept, staring at his face in the dim light. Because she wasn't just deciding about a job anymore, she was deciding whether to let a man who had once broken her heart try to heal something far more fragile. And she had no idea if love could survive the truth waiting between them. Though Sofia didn't tell him about the question, she carried it with her instead, the way she carried everything else quietly, carefully, tucked somewhere deep where it could hurt without being seen. Is my dad nice? The words replayed in her mind during the bus ride to work, while she filed documents, while she stood at the sink washing Mateo's favorite cup that had a crack along the rim. Nice wasn't the right word for a man like him, but maybe it was the word a child deserved. The office settled into a rhythm that surprised her. Days passed without incident, no raised voices, no humiliation, just work that stayed at work. She began to breathe easier, to sleep deeper. The burn on her chest faded from red to yellow to a faint shadow, but the memory of it lingered in her body like a warning. He kept his distance. When they crossed paths, it was brief, a nod in the hallway, a quiet good morning, no pressure, no pushing. Part of her was grateful. Another part felt unsettled by how much she noticed his absence. On Friday evening, Mateo came home clutching a piece of paper, eyes bright. I'm supposed to bring someone to Family Day, he announced proudly. Her stomach dropped. Family Day? At school, he said. Everyone brings their mom or dad, or both. She forced a smile. When is it? Next Friday. A week. She had a week. That night, after Mateo fell asleep, Sofia sat on the edge of the couch, staring at the wall. She could go alone. Plenty of parents did. But Mateo had asked about his father. He was starting to notice what was missing. Her phone buzzed. May I ask how you're settling in? She stared at the message longer than necessary before replying. It's good. Thank you. A pause. If there's anything you need. Her fingers hovered, then typed. Mateo has Family Day at school next week. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Are you asking me to come? She closed her eyes. I don't know, she admitted. I'm telling you. The reply came slower this time. Whatever you decide, I'll respect it. She exhaled, tension easing slightly. Respect. He was learning the language of it at least. Family Day arrived wrapped in sunshine and nerves. The schoolyard buzzed with parents and children, laughter echoing against brick walls. Sofia held Mateo's hand, scanning familiar faces, feeling both present and separate. Mama, Mateo said suddenly, squeezing her fingers. Everyone has 2. Not everyone, she replied softly. He looked up at her, eyes searching. Will mine ever come? The question lodged in her chest. She looked toward the gate. He stood just outside it. No suit today. Just dark jeans, a simple jacket. He looked ordinary, almost, but there was tension in the way he held himself, like he was bracing for impact. She nodded once. He waited for her to open the gate. When she did, Mateo tugged her forward. Who's that? She knelt, heart hammering. That's someone important. The man crouched as well, bringing himself to Mateo's level. He didn't reach out, didn't assume. He just smiled, small and careful. Hi, he said. I'm your name, Sofia said gently. I'm Luca, he finished. Mateo studied him with open curiosity. You're tall. Luca chuckled softly. That's what they tell me. You have my eyes, Mateo added matter-of-factly. Sofia's breath caught. Luca swallowed. So do you. The moment passed, fragile and strange, before a teacher called everyone together. They spent the afternoon in awkward, quiet proximity. Luca stayed where Sofia could see him, never stepping in without her signal. When Mateo tugged his sleeve to show him a drawing, Luca bent close, listening like it mattered more than anything else in the world. Sofia watched it all, her heart twisting painfully. On the walk home, Mateo skipped between them, chattering non-stop. Did you know Luca knows how to draw cars? He said. And he doesn't yell. Sofia glanced at Luca. That's good. I don't like yelling, Luca replied quietly. I'm trying to unlearn it. That night, after Mateo was asleep, Sofia stood at the kitchen sink, hands submerged in warm water. Luca waited behind her, giving her space. "He likes you," she said finally. "I like him," Luca replied. "Very much." She turned to face him, eyes serious. "Liking him isn't enough." "I know," he said. "But I'm here." She searched his face for certainty and found something steadier than promises, patience. "You can come again," she said, "sometimes." His breath released slowly, like he'd been holding it for years. "Thank you." As he left, Sofia leaned against the counter, heart racing. She hadn't forgiven him, but she had opened a door, and doors, once opened, were hard to close again. The first time Luca stayed for dinner, Sofia burned the rice. It was a small thing, barely worth noticing, except she never burned rice. She stood at the stove staring at the pot like it had betrayed her, heat climbing up her neck, while Mateo talked excitedly from the table about a math game he'd learned at school. "It's okay," Luca said gently from behind her. "I like it a little crispy." She shot him a look. "You're lying," he smiled. "I've lied worse." That urged a reluctant huff of laughter, the tension easing just enough for her to breathe again. Dinner was awkward but warm. Mateo asked 100 questions about Luca's car, his height, whether he could run fast. Luca answered all of them seriously, like each one mattered. When Mateo spilled water, Luca reached for paper towels without making a sound. No yelling. Sofia noticed everything. Afterward, Mateo insisted Luca read the bedtime story. Sofia hovered in the doorway, arms crossed, ready to intervene. Luca sat stiffly on the edge of the bed, book in his large hands, his voice low and careful as he read. Mateo corrected him twice. Luca accepted it without offense. When the light clicked off and the door closed, Luca stood in the hallway like a man waiting for judgment. "You did fine," Sofia said. He nodded. "I was terrified." She studied him for a moment, then turned back to the kitchen. He followed, unsure if he was welcome but unwilling to leave yet. "This doesn't change things," she said as she rinsed dishes. "We're taking this slow." "I wouldn't know how to do it any other way," he replied. She glanced at him, surprised by the honesty. Over the next weeks, Luca became a careful presence in their lives. He came on Saturdays, sometimes Sundays, never unannounced, never late. He helped Mateo with homework, learned which foods he wouldn't touch, listened more than he spoke. And slowly, too slowly for Luca, too fast for Sofia, something shifted one afternoon. Mateo scraped his knee at the puck. He ran past Sofia and straight into Luca's arms, sobbing. Luca froze for half a second, then knelt holding Mateo gently, murmuring reassurances he probably hadn't known he possessed. Sofia watched heart pounding that night after Mateo fell asleep clutching the toy car Luca had fixed for him. Sofia sat across from Luca at the table. "You can't disappear," she said quietly. "Not now." "I won't," he said. "I swear." She shook her head. "I don't want swears. I want truth." He leaned forward, elbows on the table, eyes steady. "The truth is, my life is complicated. There are things I can't undo, enemies I can't erase." Her jaw tightened. "Then why bring yourself here?" "Because every time I leave this apartment," he said, voice rough, "it feels like I'm abandoning him all over again." Silence settled between them, heavy and intimate. She looked down at her hands. "You're not the only one who's afraid." "I know," he said softly. "I see it every time you watch us together." Her voice wavered despite her effort. "I can protect him from strangers. I don't know how to protect him from his father." That one landed. Luca didn't reach for her, didn't try to close the distance. He just sat with the weight of it. "Then let me earn the right to stay," he said, "day by day. If you ever think I'm a danger to him, I'll walk away." She looked up sharply. "You mean that?" "Yes." She searched his face for bravado and found none. Just resolve and fear. Something in her chest loosened just a little. The next test came sooner than she expected. It was a Tuesday evening when the past caught up to him. They were all in the living room, Mateo coloring on the floor, Sofia folding laundry, Luca fixing a loose table leg when Luca's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and went still. Sofia noticed immediately. "What is it?" she asked. He hesitated. "Too long." "Luca," he stood. "I need to take this." He stepped into the hallway, voice low, controlled. Sofia couldn't hear the words, but she could hear the shift in him, the cold precision sliding back into place. When he returned, his face was unreadable. "I have to go," he said. "Now." Mateo looked up. "But you said you'd stay for the movie." "I know," Luca said, crouching. "I'm sorry." Sofia felt the old panic rise, the familiar pattern. Man leaves. Child watches. "Is it dangerous?" She asked quietly. "Yes," he answered just as quietly. Her heart raced. "Then don't come back." He met her eyes. "I have to handle this so it doesn't reach you. And if it does," she challenged. "Then I failed," he said. He turned to Mateo, pressing something small into his hand, a coin, worn smooth. "For luck," he said. Mateo nodded solemnly. The door closed behind Luca, the click echoing through the apartment. Sofia sank onto the couch, breath shallow. Mateo climbed beside her, leaning against her side. "Is he coming back?" he asked. She kissed the top of his head, fighting tears. "I hope so." Across the city, Luca sat in the back of the car, darkness reflecting in the window. His world was demanding payment for the life he'd tried to keep separate. And for the first time, the cost wasn't just his own. It was theirs. He closed his eyes, jaw set. He would end this, or he would lose them forever. The next morning, the sun rose over the city like nothing had changed, but Sofia knew better. Luca hadn't returned. His absence was sharp, filling the apartment with a hollow weight that made every movement echo. Mateo's small voice called out for him more than once, each time making her stomach twist tighter. She wanted to tell her son that everything was fine, that Luca wasn't gone for long, but she couldn't. The truth was messy, dangerous, and she had spent years learning that lies were sometimes easier for children. She tried to push through the day, breakfast, school drop-off, work. Each step felt heavier than the last. Her co-workers noticed her quietness, but she only smiled faintly when they asked. Smiles had always been her armor. By mid-afternoon, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Her heart stopped. She stared at it for a long moment, fingers hovering. Finally, she pressed answer. "Hello?" Her voice shook slightly. "Sofia." Luca's voice came low, steady, but tight. "It's me. I had to deal with something." "What kind of something?" Her chest tightened. "Danger," he said. "It's complicated. I can't explain over the phone." She swallowed hard. "How long?" "A few days. Maybe a week. I'll come back. I promise." Promises. She hated promises. But somehow, his voice carried a weight she couldn't ignore. That night, she tucked Mateo into bed, holding him close as he whispered, "I miss him." "I know, baby," she murmured. "I know." Tears threatened, but she pushed them back. If Luca could face danger for them, she could endure this waiting. 2 nights later, there was a soft knock at the door. Sofia froze. Mateo stirred. She motioned for him to stay under the blanket while she crept to the door, eyes scanning the peephole. Luca. No words, just his figure in the dim light. He didn't smile. He didn't enter. He just looked at her, dark eyes unreadable. "I had to make sure it was safe," he said quietly when she opened the door a crack. "For both of you." "Dangerous," she said flatly, or another excuse. "Both," he admitted, his jaw clenched. "And I couldn't risk you seeing me like that." "You mean scared?" "No," he said, shaking his head. "Controlled, calculated. That's my world, Sofia. I can't shield you completely, but I can try." Her chest tightened as she processed that. She knew enough to understand. Luca wasn't just wealthy. He wasn't just mysterious. He was a man who carried power like a weapon. And sometimes that weapon drew danger closer than anyone realized. "You'll tell me everything?" she asked. He shook his head. "Not yet. Not until I know it's truly over. But I can tell you this, neither of you will be harmed because of me." She wanted to scream at him to stop putting himself in danger for them, to stay out of the shadows he walked. But instead she nodded slowly. "I need you to leave," she said finally. "Mateo is asleep. He doesn't need to see this." He hesitated, then left without another word. Over the next week, Sofia noticed subtle changes. The black car appeared less frequently. Luca called once or twice but never detailed anything. He trusted her judgment to decide what Mateo needed. And yet, the worry never left her chest. Then came Saturday afternoon. Sofia and Mateo were at the park, tossing a ball back and forth, when a familiar figure approached from across the playground. Luca. He stopped a few feet away, eyes scanning the surroundings before resting on her. He wasn't casual this time. There was tension in his posture, a weight in the way he moved. Mateo ran forward. Luca. Luca knelt, arms open just enough for Mateo to hug him, the child's small body pressed against him, the boy's trust and love immediate, natural, unguarded. Sofia stayed back, watching, heart aching. She hated that it hurt this much to see them together, but she hated even more that it felt right. When Mateo pulled back, smiling, Luca's gaze flicked to Sofia. No words, just an acknowledgement. Later, sitting on a bench, they finally spoke. "Are you all right?" she asked softly. For now, he admitted. "But that won't last forever. They'll come back if I'm not ready." "You said it would be over soon," she reminded him. "I didn't say it would be easy," he said, jaw tight. "Just that I'd try to make it right." "You're already trying," she said, surprising herself. "But it's too dangerous, Luca. One wrong move." "I know," he interrupted, "and I'm counting every step, every risk. I can't lose you or him." Her breath caught. She wanted to scream, to tell him to leave, to push him away. But the truth she didn't say aloud was buried deeper. She wanted him to stay. Mateo tugged at her sleeve. "Can we go get ice cream?" She laughed softly, the tension loosening. "Yes, ice cream it is." And as they walked together, she realized something she hadn't allowed herself to believe. Luca wasn't just a shadow from the past. He was here, present, and for the first time in years, so was hope. But in the back of her mind, she knew it wasn't over. Danger never disappeared that easily, and Luca's world was far from ordinary. The question lingered like a storm cloud. How much could she trust a man who carried the Mafia in his blood and still loved her? The days that followed were tense, fragile, and quiet in the way only truly dangerous things can be. Luca returned to the apartment cautiously, never staying more than a few hours at a time. He moved like a shadow, careful not to disturb Mateo's routines, careful not to force himself into Sofia's world. And yet, his presence was undeniable. Every time Mateo laughed, every time he ran to Luca with a question or a drawing, Sofia felt both relief and fear. Relief that her son had someone trustworthy in his life. Fear that trust came with a price she couldn't control. One evening, after dinner, Luca lingered longer than usual. Mateo was asleep, tucked safely under his blanket, and the apartment was quiet. Sofia leaned against the counter, cleaning a plate, pretending not to notice the tension coiling in the air. "You're worried," Luca said quietly, as if reading her thoughts. "I don't trust this," she admitted. "I can't. I've spent my life keeping danger at bay, and now you walk it into our home, and I don't know how to handle it." He didn't flinch. He stepped closer, careful not to invade her space. "I know. I wouldn't blame you if you hated me for it, for bringing this into your life." "I don't hate you," she whispered, surprised by the truth. "But I fear you, and the world you belong to." He nodded slowly. "It's dangerous. Always has been. Always will be. But I can't walk away, not now. Not when it comes to him. Not when it comes to you." Her heart twisted painfully. The words were honest, genuine, and yet the fear in her chest didn't release. He moved even closer, a mere breath away. "I can't promise it will be easy, Sofia, but I can promise I'll never hurt him or you intentionally. Every step I take it with that in mind." She studied him, the faint lines on his face, the shadow of regret in his eyes, the way he held himself like a man balancing on a knife's edge. For a moment she almost believed him. Almost. Then came the sound, a single knock at the door. Sharp, deliberate. Sofia froze, pulse hammering. Mateo stirred in his sleep. Luca's hand was on her shoulder, steady, grounding. "Stay behind me," he whispered. She obeyed. The knock came again, louder this time. Luca moved quickly to the door, eyes sharp. "Who is it?" No answer. He cracked the door open, cautious. Outside, the street was empty. No car. No one. Yet the tension didn't ease. Whoever had knocked wasn't going to reveal themselves easily. Luca closed the door, locking it tight. "They're testing me," he said quietly. "Checking if I'm complacent. Watching to see if you're vulnerable." Sofia's stomach dropped. "And if they come inside," he shook his head, "then I'll deal with them. But that won't happen. Not tonight. Not while I'm here." Her chest tightened, and she realized that the fear she had always carried alone was now shared, and that scared her more than it had ever scared her to face it alone. Over the next few nights they moved carefully. Luca stayed within reach, never leaving the apartment without her knowledge. They spoke little of the threats outside, focusing instead on small things, a joke Mateo made, a dish he preferred, the way sunlight fell through the window. It was normal, fleeting, almost fragile, but it grounded them in ways neither had realized they needed. One night, as Sofia tucked Mateo in, she found herself lingering at the doorway. Luca was sitting at the kitchen table, head in his hands, silent. "Trouble?" she asked softly. He looked up, eyes dark. "It's never far away. Even when I think it's done, it's not." She stepped closer. "Then let it wait. Just tonight, let it wait. For him. For us." He nodded, finally allowing a hint of relief to show. For him. Always for him. The words hung in the air, heavy with promise and regret, binding them in silence. And as she closed the bedroom door behind her and leaned against it, she realized something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. For the first time, she believed that maybe, just maybe, they could survive this together. But survival wasn't love. And love, when danger lurked at every corner, demanded sacrifices she couldn't yet see. As she lay down that night, Sofia pressed her hand over her heart, feeling it pound, and wondered how long Luca could keep the shadows at bay before they touched the life they were trying to protect. Because she knew the truth. In Luca's world, nothing stayed hidden forever. Morning arrived like a warning siren, sharp, relentless, and impossible to ignore. Sofia woke to the sound of Mateo calling from the living room. She rushed out, expecting a scraped knee or a spilled cereal bowl. Instead, she found him standing in front of the window, pointing. "There's a black car," he said, voice small but certain. "It's been there all night." Her stomach dropped. She scanned the street below. The car hadn't moved. Dark, sleek, ominous. Before she could react, the knock came at the door, 3 sharp raps that made her heart leap into her throat. Luca was already there. He'd slept on the couch, aware of every sound. His eyes, dark and steady, met hers immediately. "Stay inside," he ordered quietly. "I'm not leaving him," she whispered, but she didn't move. "You won't have to," he said. "Just follow my lead." He moved toward the door like a predator, body low, eyes scanning every shadow. Sofia clutched Mateo's hand, trying not to tremble, the boy's small fingers intertwining with hers like an anchor. The door opened. No one was there. A folded note lay on the mat, heavy with intent. "You've hidden long enough. Stop pretending. He belongs with me." Sofia's hands shook as she read it. Luca glanced at her, jaw tight. "They know," he said simply. "They," she whispered. "The ones I left behind," he admitted. "Enemies from the past. People who don't forgive mistakes, and now they know about him." Mateo tugged at her sleeve. "Is he coming back?" Sofia forced a smile. "Not now, baby." Luca motioned for them to stay put. "I'll handle this," he said. "No one touches him." The day passed in a blur of quiet tension. Every car, every passerby, every sound set her on edge. She watched Luca from the kitchen doorway as he moved through the apartment, like a shadow, every muscle coiled, every glance calculating. She felt both awe and terror. Finally, late that night, he sat across from her at the table. Mateo was asleep, the apartment dark and still. "They're patient," he said, voice low. "They know I won't make a mistake. They're testing my limits." Her chest tightened. "And if you fail..." He looked at her like the weight of the world rested there. "I won't. Not him. Not you." She wanted to believe him. She had to. Then he reached across the table, gently taking her hands in his. For the first time, Sofia felt a connection that wasn't just fear, wasn't just caution. It was something warmer, steadier, fragile, but real. "I've lost people before," he said quietly. "I won't lose you, not this time." Sofia's throat tightened. She wanted to argue, to remind him that the world outside this apartment could take him, could take them all, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she nodded. "Then let's make sure he never finds a reason to." They stayed like that, hands clasped, silence filling the spaces between them, a fragile truce against the darkness beyond the walls. The next morning, the black car was gone. Sofia didn't relax, didn't allow herself to. Danger had a way of returning when you least expected it. But for the first time, she noticed the small changes in Luca too, how he stayed close, careful, protective, how he no longer avoided her gaze, how his presence in the apartment no longer felt like a shadow looming over them, but like something solid, something they could rely on. Mateo awoke and ran to Luca without hesitation. "I don't want to hide anymore," Sofia admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "I can't live like that forever." "You won't have to," Luca promised. "Not if we face it together." For the first time in years, Sofia allowed herself to imagine a life where danger existed. Yes, but didn't dominate every moment. Where her son could laugh without fear, where love could exist alongside caution, not beneath it. But just as hope settled, her mind returned to the reality outside their walls, enemies patient enough to wait, watching for a mistake, waiting for a crack in their fragile life. And she realized something terrifying. Love might save them, but it could also destroy them if they weren't careful. She looked at Luca, hand still in his, and silently promised herself she would protect this fragile, dangerous, beautiful thing they had built, no matter the cost. Because by now, she knew one truth. He would risk everything for them, and she would have to do the same. The night stretched on, silent except for the soft breathing of Mateo, and Sofia allowed herself one small, careful hope, that maybe, just maybe, they could survive this together. But survival required more than hope. It required trust. And trust was harder than anything she had faced in years. The dawn came quietly, painting the city in muted gold. But Sofia didn't feel its warmth. She sat at the kitchen table, Mateo's drawings spread around her like a protective shield, Luca's hands resting lightly on hers. The past weeks had been a test, long, relentless, and dangerous. Every day, every small victory over fear and over enemies had chipped away at the walls she had built around her heart. Luca had stayed. He had been careful. He had been patient. He had been honest in ways few men could ever be. Mateo's laughter echoed through the apartment as he chased a toy car across the floor. Sofia watched him, feeling the familiar ache in her chest, the one that came with loving someone fiercely, knowing how fragile life could be. "You've changed him," she said softly, not looking at Luca. "I didn't change him," Luca replied quietly. "I just helped him see what was already there." She finally turned to face him. His jaw was tight, his eyes steady, the weight of the past years etched into his features. And yet, here he was present, patient, willing to fight for a life that wasn't easy, that was never meant to be gentle. "I didn't know if I could trust you," she admitted. "After everything, I didn't know if love was worth it." He moved closer, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. "Love is never easy," he said. "Especially not mine, but it's real, and I'll keep proving it, every day." Her chest tightened as she let herself take in the truth in his words. She remembered the cafe, the scalding coffee, the humiliation. She remembered hiding from a man who had once been the center of her life, from a man whose absence had left a void in Mateo's life that no one else could fill. And yet, here he was. Not perfect, dangerous, yes. Powerful, yes. But willing to fight for the fragile, imperfect, beautiful thing they had. Luca bent down, lifting Mateo into his lap. The boy's small arms wrapped around him without hesitation, trust absolute, love immediate. Sofia's heart ached, but not with fear. With something stronger, hope. "Do you want to come with us today?" Luca asked gently, holding Mateo out to her. She hesitated, then nodded. Yes. And together they stepped out into the sunlight, not blindly, not foolishly, but carefully, with awareness of the shadows that lurked. Danger had not vanished. It never would. But for the first time, Sofia believed They could face it together. They walked through the city, Luca's hand steady on hers, Mateo skipping ahead. Laughter filling the spaces between buildings, carrying them forward. Later, as they sat by the river, Mateo tossing stones into the water, Sofia leaned her head on Luca's shoulder. He didn't wrap an arm around her. He didn't need to. His presence was enough. Steady. Real. "You've seen everything I am," he said quietly, voice low, almost a whisper. "And you still let me stay." "I didn't have a choice," she replied, with a small smile. "I couldn't walk away from him. From you. From what we're building." He pressed his forehead to hers, eyes closing briefly. "Then we protect it," he said. "Every day. Together." Sofia nodded. The weight of fear, of danger, of the past, everything that had threatened to pull them apart felt lighter here, in this small moment. They didn't need fireworks. They didn't need grand declarations. They needed patience, trust, love, and vigilance. And for the first time in years, Sofia allowed herself to believe they had all of it. Mateo laughed again, looking up at them with pure joy, and Sofia finally allowed herself to exhale fully. The past, the coffee, the humiliation, the absence was still a part of them, but it no longer defined them. What defined them now was the fragile, stubborn hope that Luca had fought for, and that she had chosen to embrace. And as the sun dipped low over the river, painting their faces in gold, Sofia realized something powerful. They had survived. They had endured. They had loved. And sometimes that was enough. If this story touched your heart, please like the video and subscribe to the channel so we can share more stories of love, danger, and hope.